Hey everybody, this is Clayton Olson, and I'm excited today because I've got Coach Natalie with me from Love Advice TV. And in today's topic, we're going to be diving into the tragic world of breakups, and we're going to dive into really her philosophy on breakups because she's got a lot of expertise in this area. And we're also going to be talking about what it might look like to try and fix your relationship if you're going through a breakup as well. So welcome, Coach Natalie. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Clayton. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we were talking a little bit about breakups off camera when we were preparing for this interview. And I think one of the pieces that I really appreciated, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on my channel, was because you coach people through breakups, but you have this kind of like personal development passion around it. And I feel like that's something that we definitely share in terms of our values. And so I think what I'd love to just start off, because I'm curious about this, is what is your philosophy around breakups? Like, what do you feel is actually going on in someone's life? What's the opportunity there? What have you noticed after working with your coaching clients all these years?
Well, I definitely think that objectively breakups are really, really difficult. There's not really a right or wrong way to do it, but I will say what's really interesting or fascinating for me personally about breakups is that almost instantly it ignites a call to action in a way that we don't typically experience when things are going really well. See, when things go really well, there is no need to necessarily reflect because things are going well. What we're doing is working. But when we're in a breakup, we instantly realize that something isn't working. And that opportunity to look under the hood of our lives is something that I've grown to love. And when I'm lucky, my clients love it too. They get to really turn deeply into themselves and walk out the other side really proud of who they are.
Beautiful. Okay. And I love what I hear you saying, which is that it's almost like it brings to light the places where it might be time for us to self-reflect and look at the places where we can upgrade who we are being in our lives so that we can start to transform. Now, I know that can be a super painful process for people, right? I mean, it sounds like when I hear personal development, and I know that other people, when they hear self-growth, personal development, it's like there's pictures of people standing on top of a mountain with their hands up, right? There's like this freedom that can come with it. You're working on yourself. But I think what some might fail to realize is that personal growth can be incredibly difficult. And so one of the things I'm curious about, especially with your work with breakups, how do you take somebody from a place where this is the worst thing that has happened to them, right? They didn't see it coming. They don't feel like they chose this. And suddenly they've been blindsided by the person they love, maybe the most important person in their life has like walked away from them. How do you help them get to a place where it can be like a pleasurable process where there's all this insight and growth?
Well, I think that's a really great question. And I really love the visual of the person on the mountaintop, because then my immediate question is, how do we think that guy got there? Right? He probably wasn't dropped off by a helicopter. He probably had to climb up, and he probably had a lot of obstacles to overcome along the way. And I think what's really interesting with clients is that, so with my one-on-one client, it's going to be a little different than in a video like this, because what I really do is help them define really measurable goals. I think having big long-term goals is really significant, but I think bite-sized goals along the way help sustain momentum. And I think that when we think about breakups, when we think about really big concepts, when we think about our future, we tend to leap from A to Z. And what I think clients really find value in is going from A to B, to C, and then to D. So I think really breaking it down is essential. And so I think in terms of getting them motivated about it, it's about giving them goals that are attainable enough to where they get to feel what success tastes like. And once we get a little bit of it, we want to move forward. We want to continue on that same trajectory. But I know it's not as cut and dry and as simple for everyone. And I think a lot of us slip and fall along the way. It's sort of the hope, I suppose, in being able to evolve into someone that we're really proud of, that helps encourage us to stand back up.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I know that when I look back in my past and I remember some of the breakups that I've been through, I remember just the feeling of failure that came with that. Like the losing of somebody, whether it was me breaking up with them or whether they were breaking up with me, it felt like such a devastating failure, maybe like a waste of time, like I made a wrong decision. How could I have missed this? And I hear you on helping somebody begin to get those small successes and how that's like the first step of getting someone back up on their knee, right, with a hand on the ground, to all of a sudden maybe being able to stand up and then finally get back up and be able to walk again. So I love that idea of small chunking kind of their success down in these ways that are attainable. Do you have any like concrete examples of ways that you might help somebody accomplish like these smaller goals, like what those might look like?
Totally. Well, I think so. What's really, also fascinating about relationships is that typically they reveal, they're sort of indicators of how we're coping with other areas in our lives. So if we are short-tempered with a partner, we might express lack of temper elsewhere, with our coworkers, with our family members, with our friends. And so almost using your relationship as an opportunity to outline and identify spaces in our lives that can improve. And that's where breaking up can be so powerful, because when we mend, for many of us, when we mend issues that ignited a breakup, we mend a lot of other issues that exist outside of the breakup. So for example, let's say someone is working on their communication skills and they want to be stellar communicators in their relationship. Bite-sized goals might be challenge yourself to communicate with a coworker this week and write down that experience and outline how it felt for you by incorporating the mirroring technique or by incorporating reflective listening, and then bring it to our session. Let's see how it went. And using other spaces as practice to refine technique, to identify areas within ourselves that we can work on and to apply it elsewhere in hopes of almost mending our relationship ability from the outside in rather than from the inside out. Because once we're in a breakup, we're not on the inside anymore. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And what's coming to mind is this metaphor. I've always talked about the breakup being a gateway to a transformed version of self, or like a vehicle, a crucible for you to do the greatest work of your life in. And what I hear you saying, I don't think that you disagree with it. I hear you saying this kind of, that the breakup is a mirror in some ways, that the breakup will actually help you see all of the places that you can develop and become more engaged with life, more engaged with people, more loving, a better communicator, which I love that. And I've never thought about it that way, as a breakup as a mirror. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad that it resonates.
Yeah. So the people that come to you, are they just wanting to feel like themselves again? Are they also wanting to fix relationships? Like, what do you see come through your door and with the clients that you work with? And what are outcomes that people are wanting?
So I think it's a really good question. And I think what's really fun about coaching in this space is how goals transform over time. So I would say most clients that I initially work with want to restore a broken relationship. They want to return to a partner. But along the way, for many clients, not for all, their goals shift. Their goals change toward wanting personal development, toward wanting to feel sexy in their own skin again, toward wanting to embrace autonomy and independence. So it's sort of like what motivated them to commit working with me in their initial session might not be the power that they truly unfold or unveil along the way, if that makes sense. And so I think that so using maybe an analogy or a comparison, a lot of people initially joined weight loss programs because they want to lose weight. They want to feel trimmer, they want to feel slimmer, they want to feel sexier. But then as you incorporate weight loss techniques, you end up feeling better, you're sleeping more soundly, you're not hooked on a lot of other maybe additives or chemicals that we experience in an unnutritious or unhealthy diet. And over time, the goal changes from wanting to look sexy in a bathing suit to wanting to just feel good all the time. So I think the way our goals begin and how they transform over time is something that I really enjoy with the process. So I would say initially clients come because they want to restore a broken relationship, and many go on to achieve that goal, but many end up sort of redefining their goal along the way and choose something else.
Mm-hmm. I love the fat loss analogy. That's great. Yeah. Interesting. I love how it could be on one level, it seems kind of superficial, or maybe not necessarily superficial, but let's say it's existing almost as the obvious goal, right? And then there's these deeper kind of motivations underneath that get uncovered. So I love that. One of the things that I see in this space is there can be judgment around trying to fix a relationship with somebody that has broken up with you. And, you know, there's the saying of like, well, your ex is your ex for a reason, right? So I would love to just pop this open and see what your thoughts are on it. But like, how do you know whether someone should fight for a relationship if they've been broken up with? Like, is it true that when a relationship ends, that there shouldn't be a second chance? Or do you believe in every case you should fight for it? Like, how do you discern perhaps, what's going to be in alignment with the client's like highest version of self versus what might actually be disabling them or disempowering to them?
I really love that question, by the way. And I think that when it comes to things like this, it's really about whether or not getting back together or whether or not the breakup stemmed from something we were missing, something we weren't achieving, something we weren't doing properly. So a lot of breakups happen, or a lot of relationships can't sustain themselves because we might have bad habits. And as a consequence of those bad habits, the relationship destabilizes and eventually dissolves. So I think whether or not you want to recover and whether or not you want to fight for it is dependent on whether or not it helps you enhance and improve as a person. So for example, if you left me because I verbally mistreated you, then I deserve to recover from that. I deserve to be able to collaborate with a professional or on my own autonomously and renegotiate my communication skills and have another try, whether it's with you or with somebody else. Either way, the improvement should happen. When I would tell a client not to pursue is if it encourages you to abandon fundamental values that otherwise serve you. So for example, let's say a client tells me, I'm monogamous, but my partner is a habitual or serial cheater. Infidelity is a big staple to their character, but I want them back. And then I have to ask them, okay, well, what are we going to compromise? What are we going to abandon to nourish that relationship? And they might say monogamy. And I'm going to say, okay, well, objectively, how does that make you feel? And they might say, I don't know if I like that. And now we're changing the scope of the conversation because now we're sort of uncovering that you have to sacrifice parts of who you are, parts that you identify with, that you value in order to nourish something else or someone else. So in those cases, maybe pursuing the relationship isn't in your best interest because it encourages you to downgrade rather than upgrade. So I would say sort of the direction of the growth or the fall will determine whether or not you want to give it a shot. But then I can say I'm married to a man that I dated and broke up with and got back together with. And so is Adrian, ironically enough.
So am I.
And so it happened. Really?
Yeah, so am I. And here's another crazy thing, Natalie, too, is I am the product of my parents breaking up for months and then getting back together. Like if they hadn't got back together, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be born. So yeah, it's almost like I've been born into this to have a philosophy. It was like, yeah, people break up and get back together all the time. And to say that you shouldn't try to create a new type of dynamic. I just don't think that's correct in every case. So,
well, I love that. Kudos to your parents. Kudos to you, to us, and I think, I guess it also goes back to the fundamental question, and please stop me if I'm going on a tangent or veering off topic here.
Please go
I think it goes down to the fundamental question of whether or not you believe people can change. Some people would say you absolutely cannot. And for that, perhaps pursuing a former relationship is no good for you. I fundamentally believe people change. I get to see change in my clients every day. My clients are proof that change is possible. So for me, if you can change, they can change, then the relationship, the context, the quality of your relationship will consequently change. If you can't change, now we're in a cycle that can be harmful or detrimental to your mental health or to your life. So I think it really depends on fundamentally if you believe change is possible.
I love reducing it down to that. If like, okay, what is your actual belief on what it means to be a human being, and can we modify and can we actually change? And that's what it speaks to. So that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Something that came up while you were talking was this idea of, I've worked with clients in the past who have said to me, they're like, well, do I work on trying to save this relationship or do I work on myself? And do you ever have clients come to you that kind of in the beginning, maybe they're like, well, I got this one path where I just need to work on myself, versus one is actually maybe trying to get back together with the person and fix the relationship. Do you see those two as mutually exclusive paths, or do you see them one and the same?
I think they're so deeply interconnected. And in fact, I'm quite, my commitment to my clients is to keep it real. That's who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone who's an advocate of Band-Aid solutions. That's not necessarily something I identify with. I don't think, and you might get them back, but can you keep them? Then becomes the question. Are you now going to create the cyclical problem where, you break up, you get back together, you break up, you get back together, and now it's this volcanic, eruptive, tumultuous thing? Or are you going to do the work? And what's really cool about my space in coaching, our space in coaching, is that to get your ex back, to rebuild the relationship, you have to self-improve. You have to grow as a person. So it's really two birds and one big stone, and that stone is work. And if you put in the work, people see the results. So I would say that they're so interconnected, and people that try to bypass that process, people that choose the helicopter to the top of the mountain, end up repeating so many mistakes, and you might get them back. You might meet someone new, but those bad habits, they're coming with you.
Yeah.
We don't get to pick and choose unless we actively make the effort to pick and choose. So I would say that without the personal development, you're setting yourself up for more heartbreak in the future, and that's not fair to you. Because those who have experienced heartbreak know you only need one. We don't need to do this all the time.
Totally. Do you think that, depending on whether you're working with, say, a man or a woman, that the path to reconciliation is the same, or are there some nuances there that are different?
I definitely wouldn't say that they're the same. I would say nothing is a sort of a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Not all men operate in the same way. Not all women operate in the same way. I will say things I've observed.
Yeah.
Women really value feeling understood by our male counterparts. It's almost how we gauge safety. Feeling heard, feeling understood is how we gauge compatibility, connection, safety. And so I think that's something that we want to consider. And I do so many exercises with my clients that really zoom in on empathy, primarily when wanting to reconnect with women. Identifying what motivates them, what drives them, how they perceive the world will determine how to love them correctly. And I'd say men really value feeling respected. Men want to feel respected and honored in their relationship. So that's something when it comes to working alongside my female clients who want to collaborate or reconnect with men. We'll mostly focus on exercises outside of empathy that make sure that we're honoring their need to feel seen, to feel respected in their relationships.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Do you think that there's, in every situation, it's mandatory that somebody goes, takes a period of no contact or a pause from the other person in terms of communication? Or do you believe it's possible to be in the midst of a breakup, still be in communication very regularly, and do the self-improvement that's necessary? And I know I'm kind of asking you that it's a general question, right? It might be case by case, but I'd love to just hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it really depends on who you are as a person. So to your point, it might be more case by case, but I'll say generally, it depends on what's motivating your behavior, right? So if anxiety is motivating your change, it likely won't cement as permanent. And the more time you take away from a breakup, the more you're sitting where I'm sitting, right? So what I tell clients is when you go into no contact, you get the luxury of stepping out of the relationship so that you can view it from the outside in. And now we can evaluate it from a non-emotional standpoint and let reason catch up to the equation. Because in a breakup, our hearts are so emotionally fueled. Many times they take the wheel, and then we end up saying things or doing things that we look back and aren't proud of, and actually severed the possibility of reconciliation. So I'd say, if you are able to walk out of a long-term relationship unscathed immediately, you're a superstar. I would say that is not the average response. Typically, people need some sort of healing time, and they deserve to take that before you make a decision that has the possibility of impacting the rest of your life, right? Who we commit to long-term, that is huge. And I think that we deserve to give it the time and the space, to give ourselves the time and the space to make the right decision. And when we're emotional, we just run the risk of allowing our emotions to make that decision rather than other elements of who we are that are really important.
What I think is really cool about that answer is I didn't hear at any point in that you say, Oh, it's because we want to make sure the other person starts to miss you, right? Or we want to affect the other person in some way. Everything you said is about you getting perspective so that you can let your reason catch up to the situation. Two, so that you can like respect the fact that this last relationship is ending and give it some pause for you to really be able to get clear on what it is that you want and not be emotionally reacting and not be bringing anxiety into the interaction and then later regretting your actions because you acted from a place of fear rather than balance and poise. So yeah, I love that. I'm in line with it.
Awesome.
So I feel like I could talk with you all day about this. And at the same time, too, I also want to be respectful of time. I think we've been talking for about 20, 25 minutes. I'm curious if there's anything that you want to, if there's anything that you want to name that has come up as any like last words about this.
You know what I would say? I would say give a process time. And I think that so many of us rush to the finish line here. And you do yourself a disservice when you don't take the time and when you don't do the work. And a relationship is one of the biggest commitments of your life. It's one of the biggest investments of your time and your energy and your effort and your emotion in your life. So treat it well and protect yourself and honor your needs, so that you can create the opportunity to make good choices, to make good decisions, to feel love, to give love. And I think that what's so frustrating about relationships when compared to so many other things is that in other parts of our lives, we're told that to be better, we have to do more. You want to be a better athlete, train more. You want to be a better professional, work harder, work after hours. In a relationship, it's one of the few places where less can be more. And time and space can be helpful. You don't need to be glued to it to ensure that it thrives. The opposite. You can give it freedom to exist autonomously. And so I think that embracing those tools, embracing space, time, patience makes all the difference in the long run. And I think that when we're hurting, we throw those things out the window because we want to feel better fast. So I would say don't fall for the trap. Don't fall for the trap of wanting a quick fix. You do yourself a disservice in the long run.
What really stands out to me as I hear you say that is just this idea of slowing down and not letting urgency drive your decisions, which I think is just gold. So Natalie, thank you for coming on. And I'm just curious, I'm sure that there's many women and men that are watching this right now that want to learn more about you and want to continue to get support by you. So if they're in that boat, what would you suggest?
Well, I'd say, first of all, thank you to them. And I hope that what I did today and what we shared today, what we talked about today resonated and hopefully was inspiring to some of your viewers. In terms of our content, Love Advice TV, always, we post there all the time. I do weekly YouTube lives where I collaborate live with the audience. And I also have a variety of products and coaching sort of offerings to my clients. A product that I really resonates with me that I think might align well is called the Reset Method. Basically, it's a step-by-step guide on how to reset your behaviors in your relationship in hopes of reconciliation. So I think that this is definitely geared toward the client who does want to reconcile. It still offers personal development, but with a much more tailored goal when compared to something else. And in terms of our coach offerings, I'm always here for a one-on-one. As you know, as hopefully I've been able to showcase here today, I love to talk. I find joy and purpose in what I do. And so I would go to withmyexagain.com. That's where we have all of our coaches, my team. I love them. I hold them near and dear. They've become my family over all these years. They share very similar philosophies to me. And it's a community we've built, and we're so excited for anyone who's viewing this to come on in and join our family, because love hurts, but you don't have to go through the hurt alone.
Beautiful. All of those links, the YouTube description, the product, the programs, the website, they're all in the description below this video. Go ahead and go there right now. Click on the one that you think is most fitting for you. And Natalie, once again, thank you for coming on. It was great. I'd love to have you back and to dive in deeper into breakups.
Awesome. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope you have a really peaceful rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.